Hello, Knights of the Roll Table. So what you're about to hear is our wrap-up session for Season 3. It is not story content at all. It's just us, the humans, the performers behind the characters, talking about the season and things that we enjoyed. It's actually in two parts because the first 30 minutes or so is recorded immediately after we finish Season 3. You'll literally hear the last line of Season 3 and then our reactions right after that. And then a couple of weeks later, we got back together and we talked about it. We went through kind of like all the episodes of the season and talked about things we enjoyed and things that we kind of wanted to get, things the players wanted to get my take on behind the screen and stuff like that. This is something that was really cool to do, and I definitely recommend you do it with your own groups. When you finish a campaign or just get to a point where kind of the big reveals have happened and there's an opportunity for the DM to be able to kind of like talk openly and share some of the stuff that they might have had to keep secret previously. It's really a great opportunity to communicate and kind of like cheer each other on and just share what's been going on for you in a session. So I definitely recommend doing this. It's really, really long. We talked a lot. I think it's all pretty interesting. I think if you really enjoyed the season and want to get to know kind of like what we were thinking all along, it's pretty cool to listen to. And if you're not into that, then that's why it's a bonus episode. Feel free to skip right on by. Although you might want to skip all the way to the end because the last few minutes, our DM for Season 4 will give a short little prologue leading into Season 4, so you might want to check that out. So in terms of our release schedule leading up to Season 4, next week you will hear our one-shot, first part of our one-shot DM'd by Chris, following Jarek and Sarsa on the journey to rescue Jarek's dad. Our friends Chanel and Lenny joined us for that and did a great job, and also our very special guest star, who was actually the creator of the original Darkwing Duck cartoon series and the creator of the original Chippendales Rescue Rangers cartoon series, as well as many other things. And also my dad, Tad Stones, is going to be playing Jarek's dad, Eric Darkharbor. So that was a lot of fun to record with him. And you should definitely check that out. So that'll be in 1 week that'll release. It'll be in 2 parts, so 2 weeks after that. And then I think we will actually do a special Halloween episode that we will tell you more about in the future. And then after our Halloween episode, we will start Season 4. So a little bit of a potpourri of excitement on its way to you. Now, hope you enjoy this wrap-up show. Take care of yourself, take care of each other, and make life an adventure. We'll need every resource we can summon for the resistance. And that will be end of season.
Oh, man.
Oh,
Nice.
Snap.
What do you guys think?
Be a cliffhanger who they promote.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Super good.
What a roller
Good
coaster.
times.
Yeah, this is definitely the most intense season for sure.
I like the nautical theme. I think that was well done
Mhm.
and well played. How it kind of like stuck to that the water elements
Yeah, it was really cool.
was
Mhm.
fun.
And it's hard to do too.
Really fun, like NPCs throughout too. I feel like in this season especially, really enjoyed that.
Yeah, really
Thanks.
cool, diverse bunch.
Thanks very much to the town of Giaca and support.
Yay, Jeff.
All of Giaca.
I kind of was hoping that Nefejni was. I was like, man, if he pulls this off, like,
Oh, I know.
I was gunning for you for the title of like most ridiculous attempted plan of action, but that wisdom save was like, okay, yeah, Zach's not gonna let me get away with this.
Fair, but I had to try.
Oh yeah, for
Now
sure.
Fashion still got your back. Now Fashion will turn up.
Okay.
But clearly,
I
he was
wrote-
better friends with XX Minotaur than you.
Minotaur did
Yeah.
call in a favor, but XX doesn't know about it.
It's true.
Anybody who can
Oh,
move
what?
the what is that? The
Immovable
what is it?
rod.
Immovable
The
rod.
immovable
Yeah.
rod. Bring it on, bro.
Rod.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Ugh.
all right.
Yeah, that was classic.
He is now the immovable XX Minotaur.
Mm-hmm.
Except for like he is movable. Like he did the movie.
He's not that bright, okay? It's just
Mover of the immovable. I love that's such a great moment. And what I like most about it is the reaction of the group was like they had no idea they had done something impossible. That XX Minotaur did something impossible. So they're just like, oh, it's a piece of crap. It doesn't work.
this thing sucks.
Hey, get your garbage out of here, okay? Get it.
Oh man. Ooh, good job. It must be broken.
It's the first attempt to
man.
use it.
I thought the whole like warping through realities thing was like so wild. Where like there was this whole like detour episode with XX Bloody Heart. I love that like each season we have this little detour episode.
Usually with XX Bloody Heart.
Oh yeah.
You know, give the people what they want.
Is that what they want?
They want antics, and we provide that.
I want antics. You can't handle the truth.
The show doesn't have enough antics.
I really liked Gravely and Farah's deal. I thought that was a nice thing that built
Let's
up
do just
slowly.
a whole
and was
romance
great.
season.
It was really cute.
Oh, we didn't go back to
Oh, no.
Farah, but you had a very nice final scene with Farah. So
Yeah. So if Drop Off killed Aqualius and he became the Lord of the whatever, does Gravely is Gravely now the Lord of the Water Realm or something because he killed Drop Off? You don't have to answer that. I'm just throwing it out there.
it was a good lingering
It's gonna
question.
be like a Davy Jones thing where you have to go like live underwater.
Yeah.
more.
Well, that's just.
I imagine it kind of like the way you did with what was the Goliath's name last season? I'm totally blanking right now.
Massimo.
Massimo.
Massimo and Bart,
Massimo
right? Where he just like
Lionheart.
slowly morphed from Bart into Massimo over the course of several episodes. Just do that with the Water Lord. Just Gravely just slowly becomes more and more powerful.
He just starts sweating more and more until eventually, like, he just has a liquid sheen at all times.
That is super gross.
Call me
He
moist.
could just move to Florida though, right?
Ooh,
I don't think it would affect him.
but why?
It'd just be a regular old Gravely. Would it affect him, or would it just be regular old Gravely in charge of the bureaucracy of the water realm?
Hey guys, I think salt water's good.
I have
Not
a
what I
complaint.
sound like.
That's not what I sound like. Can you do your best Gravely impression? I don't even know.
Let me hear Gravely again.
I'm gonna shoot him with my bow.
I've got to shoot him with my bow.
I've got to shoot it with my bow.
Oh, I'm gonna shoot him with my bow.
Oh, I've got to shoot him with my bow.
We all just sound like a bunch of like beggars.
Yeah, sound like a bunch of drunk parrots.
Oh,
All right, well now we get to impersonate everybody else.
Nope, just you. Anyway,
So I would like to maybe just like go down the line here and have everybody just kind of share some thoughts about like how you feel like things went, kind of like where your character's at, or any sort of like questions you have, or just sort of any impressions for the moment, just so everybody gets an opportunity to speak a little bit. Anybody want to go first?
No, I'll go first. That's
So
fine.
Jen / Maya / Sarsa / Clara. With any of those people, past, present, and future, where are you at right now, just after wrapping up season 3?
Being fresh off of, Maya, I feel like she's kind of at an interesting place because she's, kind of had this upbeat kind of naivete, almost feeling of imperviousness, but has literally, now having kind of come back from death, and she still has that kind of optimistic nature, but like I don't know, I feel like I kind of need to decide, or it'll be interesting to see how, hey, we've now kind of saved the world ish like twice now, and great, we get to do it again, which is kind of, I almost wonder if for her it's starting to feel a little repetitive. Like obviously, like we know that the stakes are just only getting raised and higher. But I don't know. I'm just thinking for her, it's kind of like, oh, we have to go do the thing again. And geez, I thought we just saved everybody, you know? So I don't know. I could actually see her having a little bit of internal conflict about that. You know, obviously she wants to do the right thing, but it's like, why does everything keep getting mucked up all the time? Hashtag 2020.
Mike
and then
could drop
Carson-
into a dark emo
that.
phase at the same time that XX Bloody Heart becomes all like positive and
XX Buddy Heart.
happy.
That'd be kind of fun. Yeah, she might be due for like a pissy phase. I feel like she kind of was a little mopey. When was that? There was like half an episode where she was a little mopey. But
Things are pretty complicated for Maya.
yeah. So, and then like Sarsa, we'll see. I think we're going to explore kind of what she and Jarek are up to, but I'm looking forward to that.
Mm-hmm.
And then Clara's just, looping.
Whatever.
Whatever.
Savannah loves that character, by the way.
Does she really?
FYI.
That is like, that's so funny to hear because like that was such a like impulse. Like I think out of all three, she's the one I've given the least thought to.
Didn't have the opportunity.
That is so true. Thanks, Zach.
Or the choice. Well done. Here's the card you've been dealt. The character sheet you've been dealt.
Forced
Play it.
improv.
Yay.
Matt Messerman, player of Branch, the branch from the smallest tree in the forest.
Oh, yes.
Where are you at? How are you? What are you thinking?
Good. That was a fun character to play.
Yeah.
I mean, I love playing druids anyway, but then just the goblin on top of that was extra fun. I really liked how he was kind of weak when we first met him, and when he came back, he was just like throwing people off ships as a giant octopus and stuff.
That was pretty rad.
If we see him again, it'll be really interesting because this is going to be a big change for him. He's been living off on his own for most of his life. He left his little goblin clan and been living in the forest with his animal friends. Now he's got human friends, so to speak. So I'm real interested to see where he might go.
Yeah, Branch was a lot of fun. Great voice, great character, great take on the character. Glad we got you back in there, summoning all sorts of craziness, even though that's the least favorite spell of any DM.
Oh, it's the worst.
I know, I'm so sorry about that.
When the druid conjures 16 small animals into initiative or whatever. Ugh.
Yeah, really.
We handled it well. They were a lot of fun. The frogs taking out the water elemental in one blow was epic.
Oh, I loved that. That was so great.
And also right at a moment where I'm like, oh, this fight might just kind of like drag on a little. Oh, nope. It's not going to drag on. It's over.
7 frogs.
Rabbit.
It was interesting trying to balance because the part of druids I really like playing is turning into an animal and beating people up. But I'm like, what else would he do? And I love the conjuration spells. Those are so fun. I wanted to play a conjuration wizard for a while, but wait.
Bring your own minis.
Yeah.
They will not be provided.
Alrighty, Jeff XX Bloody Heart. How are you doing?
Super.
How are you feeling about where XX Bloody Heart is at and you're at and right at this moment?
Oh, I'm trying to personally think in wrapping everything into where the future goes. So I have a lot of mind space in there. I think
we can, if we haven't initially announced in other episodes, we can announce that season 4, which we will get to in a little bit after some one-shots and checking in with other characters. Season 4 will be DM'd by our very own Jeff.
Woo.
Yeah.
Woo, yeah.
get ready.
So his brain's very busy.
It's gonna be weird.
And despite him taking over what happens next, he, even though I tried to give him a little bit of a teaser of what happened by sharing with him Sora's speech at the end there, turns out he didn't listen to it. So that's all new to him. So he's going to incorporate that twist and what's going on in the realms and incorporate that seamlessly into his plans for season 4.
I work better under pressure. The war is fine. Here's some other nonsense for you guys to do.
The Platinum Syndicate took over all of the realms. It turns out they're pretty good at it. I mean, nothing's perfect, but there's something to be said for dictatorship. And, it's not worse. Is it that much worse? It's fine. Let's go do other stuff.
The trains run on time.
All right. Well, we also had the recent return of Soot and Weston. How are you doing?
It was really interesting playing a lawful evil character, and like playing a character in a way that makes you feel disliked is really kind of a strange thing for somebody who likes to be liked. But I wanted to challenge myself, and I wanted to see if like lawful evil characters, can be in a party and work with a party, but still kind of be after their own agenda. And Soot just had this. He's just very selfish and but it made sense for Soot. I mean, he grew up with a bunch of, selfish kobolds in a society where it was constantly, people dying around you. And I wanted to bring something different to Soot, and I think he's grown a lot in this season, having finally found friends and not, just people who want to use and abuse him. So that's definitely changed who he is. In many ways, and like relying on other people, and he still is very very focused on his goal, but he might go about it in a little bit more empathetic way. So it was a really interesting experience to play a character that wasn't necessarily doing things that are liked, and I mean, I didn't want to play the that's just what my character would do kind of character. I wanted him to still be likable in some ways, and for people still to root for him. So I hope that it didn't come across in a way that was, that I as Weston, that I was being selfish as the person playing Soot. And I think that's the difference. But it was a challenge, and so it was really, really fun, and I hope I get to revisit him as well.
It was a lot of good tension points and a lot of good, if anything, I think the reaction is like, come on, Soot. Come on. Just do the right thing, Soot. And he sort of did, and he sort of didn't. He always found his own way to work angles. And the notion of him becoming the captain of the Trident was not at all in my mind. And when Soot claimed it, I was like, whoa, that is so Soot. And let's think about this.
We'll see.
I'm very excited about the possibility of Captain
He's wearing
Soot.
a very powerful crown right now.
That's a nice little angle for the future.
He's got some pull.
On the likability aspect, I found it interesting because like I loved Soot. I thought he was a fantastic character, and I was always really interested in what was going to happen. Branch hated him. Like in my head, Branch just not like, so it's just like you annoyed him to no end. But I loved it.
That's funny. Yeah, it's weird to like have the characters in the game not like you, but know that the people playing the game still like you playing the game.
Yep.
It's something I've never experienced before. It's really kind of strange.
Well, yeah, and you get a lot of that as a DM too. A lot of
that's true.
reactions of like, oh, I wanted to do that, or like, oh, what is this, and like, it's the DM's job really to have to stress out the players. But there's so many.
I like being
awkward
evil as a
moments
DM.
like that.
That's great. Don't I, Chris?
Yeah.
No.
Well, I think having that evil-ish character mixed into this story, even with XX Bloody Heart too. I mean, both of them, Soot more so, but like both of them, like they're not classic, unyieldingly good, do the right thing characters. So that will put Gravely and Maya in some interesting positions with a lot of these characters, the pirates, all sorts of people, of what did they end up doing.
I also wanted to say I really enjoyed the relationships between Soot and Gravely and Maya.
Yeah.
Because Soot was so far from what Coach was to them.
Oh yeah.
That I think their relationship with each other changed, and I can see how Soot changed kind of the both of them, which was really interesting.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really a cool thing on Chris and Jen's part to like make their characters grow, like to have Soot, some of what Soot said made sense,
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, it was an absolute blast to play him, and I really enjoyed interacting with the NPCs, and for the NPCs to just constantly be like, oh, I really like these two, but this thing, what is this guy doing
with
here?
this?
Yeah, that was a fun dynamic
with Honey Mist.
It was kind of fun, like, because I was like, Maya likes everyone. Maya has to find a reason to like Soot. And like it was kind of fun for me to play the game of like, what angle is she gonna find?
Yeah.
Like, how do we navigate this?
The most empathetic, likable character, and the most revolting kind of like selfish character. And they get along swimmingly, and she kind of changed him, and yeah, he definitely had an effect on Gravely.
Maya dressing up and naming all of his animated
so good.
So great.
is a perfect definition of their relationship.
And he was cool with it. He just went along with it. That was fantastic.
Well, it was, Soot is a very manipulative character.
Mm-hmm.
So his wanting to manipulate Maya turned into him just like liking Maya. Like just it
welcome to my world. That's her
Yeah.
superpower. I would like to point out too that in that final combat, I accomplished nothing.
The dice are unkind.
At least you weren't standing still the whole time.
You did. You know what you did? You know what you did, Jen / Maya, is you healed a bunch of people before they walked in that room, because otherwise I think all of them would have been dead.
It's nice that your warlock now has heals.
Somebody's got
but
to.
Yeah, like I was so ineffective but she's not necessarily a min-max combat based character. She's very not that.
I mean, if that Dissonant Whispers had worked, that would have been big.
For sure.
Would have taken.
There were a lot of things that, if they had worked, would have probably been.
That's the luck of the dice.
Yeah.
I think with Tiburon also, like, he was kind of like this big strong arm, and when Soot tried to like bring in the dead people onto the ship, and he was like, "No, you can't do it." like they're not coming on the ship. Like, that was great, Carlos. I love that.
I still think about Peppermint Sails.
Oh yeah, that's such a great moment.
And the sea shanty, and just like just having the nautical character of
the
Tiburon.
Sea shanties were gold.
Blistering barnacles.
I want more like Sarsa and Tiburon, because they're very kind of similar.
We have some not appropriate for everybody cuts of various sea shanties that we can't release on the regular podcast for all the families listening, but they might make their way out in some form. Carlos, that's a good intro to you. Carlos, who thought he was going to play Tiburon for a couple of episodes, and we never let him go. How are you feeling?
Yeah, long-time listener, first-time player. It was certainly an interesting transition to sort of realize, like, I really thought I was going to be around for like 2 sessions and then bounce, and then to just sort of realize, like, oh no, I'm here forever, so to speak.
One of us.
But sort of this is the longest that I've ever played D&D, but that I've played D&D in the same story with the same people. Most of my experiences either like fall apart or just switch up to something else. So this was quite interesting to be going on that long, which really isn't even that long. but that just speaks to
sort of like 7 episodes, but it took us approximately 14 years with quarantine happening and needing to figure out our audio.
That's the thing, right? We started in February, but that feels like 7 years ago. So yeah, it's the longest I've ever played D&D in a row. But it was great. Sort of, it was interesting coming in and getting to interact with characters that sort of like knew each other and had relationships before like I ever arrived. And obviously some of those relationships have been around for seasons, but some of those relationships just started this season, but were sort of like more well established than sort of where I came in. And it was about finding, initially when I approached the character, it was just, again, because I thought it was going to be short lived. It was like, okay, is there a need that I can fill for the party? And that's why I sort of went with a fighter and went with someone that was strong and sort of like sort of aggression forward,
beefcake.
Mm-hmm.
right? A real beefcake, because you were missing that aspect in the team.
Yes, we were.
And to sort of just see how he slotted in as not just like a functional character, but like a personality.
Mm-hmm.
I think that really came out in the sort of like scenes in Giacca. I was having a really, really great time with those. As Jen mentioned, Tyrone and Cersei had quite the dynamic sort of going, and getting to ride a shark is indeed a once in a lifetime opportunity that I don't think I'll ever get to do again. So
That was such a good
thank
You
you for
say
that.
that, but we're gonna keep you in the fold. You never know, man.
That's true.
Will has that
That's
trident.
true.
Mini a shark friend.
Mm-hmm.
Aquaman.
Yeah, that was a pretty sweet tool. And
was good.
Chris Gravely,
Hey.
where are you at?
Gravely, I came back to Gravely in sort of a hesitant mood, and then the first couple episodes, he lost his job and just kind of felt a little bit depressed. So I was playing him.
He didn't lose his
kinda
job so
low.
much as found out that he had lost his
Found
job
out
like
that
a
he
year
had
ago.
lost reality came crashing down. I felt he sort of grew up a little bit, and through the sort of responsibility of taking care of making sure that Soot doesn't destroy
Or
things,
murder everyone.
and taking care of having the sort of big brother Maya relationship and everything like that, I feel like Gravely sort of came into his own in a leadership position almost of the group, and just there's the whole relationship thing, and and just kind of realized like he stood up to an old rival with Bashir, and so I didn't plan that going in to the season or anything, but it's just sort of organically happened, which I think was great. And like Weston said, like Soot brought it out of him, and Maya brought it out of him, and Branch, and so it was kind of nice to have that organic progression of Gravely just like getting his confidence and realizing, killing the Lord Sharkandras at the end of season 1 was very like, panic, but with Drop Off this time was like, no, I'm going to take my fate into my own hands kind of thing. And it was
It's like how Gravely got his groove back.
it
was a really cool moment too. Like your little quip when you took him out. I was like, yes, I think I cheered, which I don't usually do. For these kind of things.
I forgot to do the cloak of billowing.
Oh.
His cloak should have billowed a
Edit
little
that
at the
in.
end.
Yeah, it's canon now. That happened.
Yeah, I mean, that really highlights, like, in perspective, like, a lot of good character journeys this season, largely propelled by all of you. I was definitely thinking you're recently editing some of the episodes of the final assault, which stretched over 3 episodes. I think, like, Gravely's really taking charge and calling out orders and telling people what to do. And, that wasn't him at the beginning. And I think Coach fell into that spot a little bit as coach, literally coaching things away. So, like, kind of in that absence, Gravely really like stepped up and had a plan. And that was definitely like a growth progression for him. And the scenes with Farah were awesome.
Yeah, I mean, he's still super
Yeah.
awkward, but don't get me wrong, like, and the team dynamic, because with Branch and Soot and Tiburon, like there's still some of them that they're still getting to know each other, and so yeah, they're not the well-oiled machine that an adventuring group can be, but it was still kind of interesting to see how they all came together, which was nice.
Zach, what were your where are you at?
Did you have any big curves that you were like, oh, this is not where I thought?
I mean, the biggest surprise that I'm quite thrilled with is Soot potentially captaining the Trident. That's a lot of fun to think about. He has a crew, and a brilliant line, by the way, Weston, about summoning your own crew. That was perfect.
Oh,
yeah.
I was following your lead.
I didn't know I was leading, but like, magic.
The thought of Soot becoming like a ghost pirate captain just makes me so happy.
Oh, jeez, so good.
That's
Terrifying.
pure nightmare
Did you-
fuel. That will be our Halloween episode.
Oh,
It's just
heck
a
yes.
mini episode of that.
That'd be fun.
Did you know that the island of Giacca was a dragon turtle, or was that an afterthought?
Me?
Yeah.
Yes, I definitely knew when you were on the island of Giacca that it was a giant living turtle.
Right. Cool.
Well, that makes one
Good.
of us.
Well played.
Your guys' reaction when that popped up was fantastic. I was the only one besides Zach who knew what it was because I was
Yeah.
on it. Just listening to all you guys go, what is happening? Was great.
I don't know, like when you were recording on your way out to it, that I necessarily knew at that point. I might have actually like worked that into the story between around the time of the second episode. Because I talked a lot about like, oh, it's an archipelago and there's a lot of islands. That doesn't really, in retrospect, make sense. So I think I actually, by the time you were on the island, I definitely knew like this is going to come to life later. And Branch needs to stay here and write it.
That's awesome.
That's funny.
Which left Matt left in the lurch, not in episodes for, again, approximately 13 years. But I'm glad he got to come back and make a big entrance.
It's a fun way to come back. You know, it could still be an archipelago, however you pronounce that word, which I think we talked about last time that word came up. You know, some of it was his tail. Maybe he had a leg floating up. It could still work.
Well, there's just a lot of little islands and one big crater now. Does anybody else have questions for me off the top of your head? You'll have more time to think about those.
How much time had passed for Sindel in the Fire Realm?
Oh, I think I said 17 years. So she's like left when she was 8 and now she's 25.
Wow.
That was something maybe we can talk more when we return to this episode, but like an unexpected like great time for me in this was when Jeff took over as Giacca and I got to really just like, for scene Sindel was in, just play Sindel and like explore her, not have this like tertiary NPC who's around who I have to like remember to include and say things, but like, oh, Jeff's got the helm for leading things. I can really occupy Sindel, and was able to find some really fun moments for her with Gravely working the market, selling
like
things.
The entrepreneurial almond.
That was a brilliant, fun scene.
Roasted almonds.
Made her a lot more of a real cool, fun character.
Oh, they're roasted now?
All right. Well, we can return to this discussion, but any last thoughts, comments right now?
I think just a big thank you, Zach, for putting this
great job.
together. This has been a fun
Huge
season,
thank you.
fun arc,
Woo!
fun session.
And for dealing with the ambiguity of recording online, since we can't record in person. I mean, that's, I think a lot of actual play, TTRPGs have kind of changed their tactics, and we rolled with the punches, all of us. So
rolled with the punches.
Hey.
Knights of the Roll Table is recorded live in San Diego, California. Taped in front of a live studio audience.
Welcome back, everybody. So what you just heard was us like right after the season finale, but now we are rejoining you weeks later. We've had some time to process and share. We've got Carlos, Chris, Jeff, Matt, and Weston here. Jen's not able to make it tonight, but you heard from her in the first half. So we've had a little bit more time to process, and because our heads were like right after the season finale happened and what had happened recently, what we're going to do now is one, share a few listener comments, things that people said when we asked, things that they enjoyed and stuff like that, and couple of questions, and also just like go through the season and remember each episode and have a little discussion of that. So let's go way back to the beginning, season 3. So the very first episode was
before
Gravely.
the pandemic.
Yeah, a long time ago.
Wow.
We were recording this in February, I think,
in person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it before that? Yeah, maybe we started in February. We got through about half the season before the pandemic knocked us all out. Anyway, so the very first episode was Gravely and Maya walking into Giacca, and Jeff was playing Giacca. We did a session zero discussion after that, or before that. So thoughts, comments, and things about that very first episode. I have a bunch of things I remembered about like how this all came together in the first episode, but
I remember absolutely just dying at the fact that like Jeff was playing an entire city Like that killed me. And like the interactions of the citizenry were so good. Like I think the idea of having like a dual DM in that way is so efficient and effective, and I'm definitely going to be like stealing that for future campaigns because it was awesome. I loved it.
I will ask you, Zach. I bet. Well, did it make it easier to kind of keep track of like the story and the encounters? Because what you told me was just like, you're going to be the city, plan some people and stuff that's in it, and then like I did that, but I didn't have to think about, well, how does this fit into a bigger story? How does this do any of that? Instead, I could just kind of create these little slices of life and get you to jump in with me to just like goof off for a little bit, just make up some dumb characters and some dumb little slices of life to fill in this or that.
Yeah, it was very fun, very great. Really takes the pressure off of like me in terms of like, I want to just let Jeff do some entertaining stuff for a while, see what happens. I mean, part of why I listened to a little bit of our session 0 session earlier today, because some things we said in there were very impactful in planning the season. And a lot of what I wanted to do in season 3 was experiment with our format a little bit, of this notion of like rotating DMs and things would come back. And so if we put me as the previous DM back in the driver's seat, how do we kind of like mix seasons together, and really like how do we find some interesting things to do with our format here that other podcasts don't do, and really with the goal of like creating a collaborative world where all of us are creating it. It's not just the DM and the players following along. It really is like all of us creating it. And so rotating DMs is obviously a huge piece of that, but like this notion of like Jeff can kind of come in and set up some stuff that I can then pick up and play with, I think was a great idea, and like worked out just so well, so helpful.
Yeah, in the start of a season, you're just setting the table. You're putting out the lay of the land, trying to build a world, build a sense of what could happen and what the environment is like. And having 2 people, I think, is a great way to do that, because you're not, I didn't worry about, long arc of the story, and, we just got to have fun and do that. So I think it's a great thing to do for, I think, the first part, and then to come back and play, a character and then go back. It was, for me, I think I drew the best straw in the at the beginning of the season, so I loved it.
So here's what I remember today, listening back on season 0. If it was just me DMing, we probably would have started on the shores of the island, just like jumping right to, you found this map and here you are, you just got dropped off on the shores of the island, which was basically episode 2. But in the session 0, I asked all of you, like, what do you want? What are things that we haven't done that you want to do more of? And I think it was Chris that said, like, I'd kind of like to do some like shopping and like hanging out. And so I was like, oh, all right, well, like I've definitely like consciously avoided those things because I just feel like it's not as fun to listen to other people's kind of like shop and figure things out. But I guess we could maybe start in a town and they can kind of go around and find their way. And then I had the thought that like, I don't really want to make like a bunch of NPCs in the town for them to wander around. And that led me to like, so I want to bring XX Bloody Heart into this season, but it's not going to happen for a while because I kind of had the plan for him to come in later. But Jeff is awesome. Like, maybe Jeff could do it for me. And that was like, hey, Jeff, could you maybe play all the NPCs? And then like that kind of evolved into like encapsulating that into like, Jeff, basically you are the town. And when they're in this town, like I want you to take over. And that just worked so great. And so I kind of like remembered today that was because Chris said, I want to shop.
Well, thank you, Chris.
Yeah, really, for that off comment.
I don't know, shopping? I'll crack my knuckles and get in there.
Well, I think not Maya. I think Jen said something about like she wanted to interact with more characters or people, something too. So as much as I think combat is fun, it's not always the most fun to listen to, and we try to keep things edited a little snappy. But I love the character building and just little real moments of like, well, we got to find this thing and we got to upgrade and we got to trade and it's like that the characters get to barter and find themselves and kind of find the community a little bit more. And I think it actually helps because then they're invested in, like, they've met people, they've met the shop owners, and they've met the bartender and the people that they like and don't like, and they're invested in this town instead of just random town that they have to save, but they haven't met anybody. So I think it's important to spend some time, even if it's a quote unquote shopping session or whatever, but it's,
and it really wasn't like, I don't think it would certainly be open to the two of you to be like, oh, I want to shop for some arrows or something. You didn't really do that, but you met a bunch of really cool people.
Session 1 was not. I think it was like session 4 or 5 or something that ended up being the shopping session, which we'll get to. But but yeah, I mean, the first one was, I mean, for Gravely at least, was important just because we went to the Dreadex office and he found out about losing his job. And that was kind of like, oh, like I left that first session personally. It's kind of like, oh man, what? I was kind of honestly disappointed for my character. I was like, I don't know what he's going to do, but I was also kind of interested, like, this could be interesting because where does this go?
We definitely talked about like Gravely's background, and I had asked you for some characters from your history to kind of incorporate into his past catching up to him. Jeff did a good job of just setting up situations where there was multiple characters, so he and I could kind of both play a character and, just like start up a scene. But that going to the hidden Dreadex office in the lighthouse or whatever and playing Bashir, who just like everybody hated so much, was just such a bully and everybody hated so much immediately. I don't know that I had a lot with Bashir planned, but he just seemed so like significant that he would have to get more. Based on how that scene went, he would have to be more involved in the story to come.
He was a fun person to hate. And I loved meeting Soot. That was another highlight.
Yeah, that's a whole thing, isn't it?
So something else I remembered is like originally when I conceived things, the notion of Soot's like intro, not who Soot was, but the notion of like the character that comes in with this dodgy looking map that is somehow inspired to follow it, would have been Lyra, Jessica's character. I thought she would be a great character to show up with like, guys, I've got this map, and like pop up out of nowhere because she has the finger that like gives her disguised self to show up and say like, hey, come with me, I've got this map. But Jessica, the human, was at that time maybe like 2 weeks from giving birth, or maybe she had a 1-month-old. I don't remember exactly where it was, but she was not at all interested in doing that. So I went to Weston of like, okay, so like whoever your character is, they've got this map, they found it, and they are committed to getting some people to there and going to check it out, and fell into that role.
I mean, really, can we really say that Soot wasn't Lyra this entire time?
Ooh.
I mean,
twist.
That's my new headcanon. I love it.
It was just Lyra the entire time.
We could go back in the whole series. The whole series, every season, we're going to pick a variety of characters that were Lyra.
I mean,
in disguise.
They're both kind of sketchy characters, like not quite doing the right thing.
It definitely would have addressed some of the trust issues right off the bat had it been someone we knew instead of it being.
Would have been a super different dynamic.
Yeah. Instead, there was so much. Like, especially with I felt like Gravely was like, I don't know about this.
You guys asked me last time in our earlier wrap-up session right afterwards, like, what were the things that kind of threw you for a loop? Thinking back across the whole season, there was a few big things, and they were almost always like Soot decisions. Weston making Soot decisions of just like being who Soot is in situations. We'll get to that in other episodes, but like all the things that were like me going like, oh man, what am I going to do with this? I was not expecting this. We're usually just Soot being Soot.
I was like really nervous because playing evil aligned characters is really difficult.
Yeah.
Because you can fall into that trope of, it's just what my character would do, and being able to walk that line of, yeah, it is like, this is what my character would do, but also like making the story like them needing to still work as a group, like that tension is difficult to walk. Like that's not easy. because like you said, I'm kind of like putting a lot of faith and trust on the DM and on my fellow players that I'm not trying to destroy the campaign. I'm trying to deepen the relationships in the campaign and trying to access these points in characters that they've never that we haven't seen yet.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't know how, like I know how I felt playing Soot, and it was really fun to play Soot, but it was also like really unnerving to play Soot because I didn't want to ruin the campaign, but I also wanted to be true to a character. But I also, I wanted to challenge the group without becoming a stumbling block for the show, like for the campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you how you ended up playing Soot changed how I played Branch a little bit, because I was going to have him be a more evil is the wrong word, a less likable character, I guess, than he ended up being. But I didn't want that and Soot. I felt like it would set off poorly, so I just had him mistrustful of humans.
That's really funny.
I like that. No, I think Weston, it was great having that dynamic because, especially Maya having this, I like everyone, or I'm going to find the good of everyone. And then it fell to Gravely to be like, wait a minute. Like, and then and Gravely sort of fell into this like older brother babysitter role, like almost like, like, okay, but I'm not going to trust you, like, and Maya doesn't know any better. So now I have to, and it was really interesting. I will say from a player perspective, like it was great having that dynamic, but I wouldn't recommend having somebody in your group unless you really trust them. Like I think we really trust each other. We trusted you to play that and to have that sort of dynamic with us. But like, if you're coming in with a chaotic evil character or a lawful evil or whatever, like you got to really trust that person, because otherwise it could go, like you were saying, like it could derail very quickly.
Yeah.
But if you trust the player, then it could be really fun. And it was very fun for me to play that. You have to be okay being frustrated in character, which Gravely was, but I was having a great time with it.
I think one of the things I learned about playing a evil aligned character is that like they just like any good evil guy or end boss or anything, their motivations have to be really like understandable.
Yeah.
And I think Soot was a very relatable character. Like people understood. Like I hope people understood why Soot was the way he was. And
I felt like you explained it really well, and like in character, I felt like his justifications totally made sense on that front.
Yeah.
So like if the party understands why your character is that way, not that they're just like going around causing chaos, I just want to watch the world burn kind of nonsense. Like there is an opportunity for growth and for change, and I think that's what happened with Soot. I mean, if Soot managed to escape the boat after blinding the captain and stealing her stuff, like he probably would have been gone.
Yeah.
But he didn't, because Carlos nabbed him, so like those,
good job, Carlos.
Those I respect like both the group, and I also respect the dice. Like what is going to happen here? What are the dice going to dictate? And that's really fun.
I want to call out episode 1. Just like the whole opera progression was just like so beautiful, so hilarious, and so like I don't think I said anything during most of it. It was so fun. Just the notion that this opera is out there. We did some singing. Maya went. She hung out with some crew. She got rolled up in a pyramid scheme that like kind of didn't take. That was just all so fun.
Yes, the grift that didn't take because Maya was too nice to get grifted. It was great. It was
so great. And it ended up with Soot pulling 2 bodies out of a chest. Like that was a very good episode. And literally, like if it was just me DMing, that whole episode probably wouldn't exist.
Do we have some merch with the with that show? Whatever that show was called, like, can we get some merch made that's like playbill? No, but the opera had a name, right? Whatever the we need to get like a shirt that just says like playbill at the top, and then like has a picture of like
Fish Guts.
Yeah, Fish Guts the musical. Yeah,
Fish Guts.
Fish Guts.
Absolutely.
Or whatever. Yeah.
Anyway, moving on to episode 2 on the island. We met Branch.
Hey, hello.
We explored. It ended up with Sindel's return.
Oh, that was a cool moment.
The notion of like that island and the little map and being lured onto this island that has this creature on it that's controlling other creatures on the island was a one shot I put together as like an introductory, this is D&D kind of thing. And I kind of like repurposed it for this episode. I actually have an actual map. I don't know if we put a picture out of it on social media, but I have an actual map that my daughter helped me make. And I like told her, we like aged a piece of paper and she drew on it. And I kind of like gave her the notion of like, this map is made by goblins, but they don't really know how to write. They don't know how to spell. And so she created like alternate spellings of Big Cove and Little Cove. It's a cute little map that I have.
Adorable.
And
can we please talk about the jellyfish?
yes.
And the removal of the jellyfish and then the fight that ensued over the jellyfish.
Sure. Discuss.
Well, like how was that supposed to work? Like I thought for a while that maybe they were undead, but then they weren't. But then they kind of were. They were like puppets. And then like Branch had this thing on the back of his neck. Like was it one of those situations as a DM where you're just like, there's this thing. I don't know how they're gonna get it off, but let's see what they do.
Yes. Yeah. I did not have a clear plan for that. And it had a lot to do with like, what was the plan and what was your roles in terms of how would that go and improvising with it. But I think the notion of like, there's this little, like, it's a cell of the creature that the creature implants in the neck of these things. And that's how it controls. And it kind of taps into the nervous system through the neck. And that's how it like zombifies.
It was actually a piece of the giant squid dude.
Yeah, that was my concept. Like we called it a jellyfish because it was this like kind of like cell with tendrils, and so that's basically what it was. But yeah, that would be basically that was my notion that like it's a piece of this creature, and that's how it maintains kind of like a psychic connection to the zombified, controlled person because it's like impacting the brain, taking over the brain, kind of.
My favorite part of that whole thing was every time I would step out of line. That Branch would step out of line. You would shine a flashlight in my eyes.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a flashlight and I'd shine it in Matt's eyes, and that was his cue that his character was in pain.
He's getting zapped.
Yeah, so definitely I don't remember what the actual rolls or attempts were. I think we had a pretty good medicine check to pull it out of Branch, and if that had failed, like it probably would have gone a lot different. Probably just like he would have passed out and you'd have to figure it out from there. I suppose if you had like rolled a nat 1 on that like roll to extract it, like I'm not sure what that would have done. I might have been like, well, he died. Like you could revive him, like you had some healing spells, but like yeah, a lot would hang on that attempted initial removal.
And then there was the wonder that was Jen like trying to befriend this like
oh yeah,
oh my gosh,
monstrosity aberration of a creature, and then like kind of doing
chorus.
it.
It's like, okay, I'll take you down underwater.
Like, what is happening right
You're my
now?
friend. Oh no.
Yeah, that was.
It's like no, wait, no.
Yeah, that was another good example of someone in our group just being like, well, this is what my character would do. I guess I'm gonna do it, and then it having fun consequences.
Yeah, and me having to figure out like, okay, so it likes her. What does that mean from this creature's perspective?
Yeah, you're like, she has to survive because I got to take her out on the boat
and be assassinated later. Let's keep it moving. So, episode 3 was the 2 captains show up. That was probably the first real soot loop. Was that he tried to fight Captain Drop Off, which was not something I was at all prepared for. Rolled out pretty nicely.
Yeah, I rolled horrible that entire encounter.
Yeah,
I think I rolled like a 2 and then a 4 for my attacks, and like it was so bad. It was so bad.
We saw his big shark people, and Tiburon showed up with Honey Mist. Sindel was alive, and we got to find out why she was older.
Yeah, episode 3 was a little chat with Sindel, meeting the 2 captains, and then going resting on the bastion, and then like the first half of raiding Drop-Off's hideout. Intro of Carlos. Carlos, you want to talk a little bit about your entry into the...
Yeah, all I really knew coming in is that Honey Mist would be my captain. She would be the captain of the ship called the Bastion, and that there's a ship called the Bastion. That was pretty much all the information that I had. So I knew I sort of wanted to come in, and it's like, okay, if I'm gonna be coming into the party, I should try and add where I can, and I think I just came up with like, well, the fighter is very straightforward, but they would probably appreciate a fighter on the team. So I just went for something simple and burly, keep it to the dice rolls, and then just try and figure out the character a little bit from there. Because I didn't come in with a specific plan, because I was going to I didn't know how far into the season y'all were, so I didn't know how far I was going to be slotting into things that were already in progress. So I wanted to feel my way around that before kind of cementing who the character would be and what they would be up to. And as I've mentioned before, I didn't expect to last all the way till the end of the season. So it was definitely a pleasant surprise to sort of continue to develop that character, when at first it was just sort of like a blank slate of like, pirate. All right.
And Carlos, is it true that you didn't even know this was a podcast?
That's true. Yeah, when the microphone started getting pulled out, I really freaked out. I was like, "Oh no,
What are these?"
Is this like an intervention? Is this one of those TV shows, 60 Minutes or something? Yeah, but no, it turned out to be a podcast, which is a very pleasant surprise, because I do well with that, but not getting interrogated. So,
Carlos, how are you with ad reads? Can you do our ad reads?
Yeah, sure, of course. As we
ever
all
get
know,
an ad read, we'll let you know.
yeah, DraftKings is the way to bet on sports. DraftKings is king, baby. For all you D&D players out there, the one true king, DraftKings.com.
You're hired.
Relevant.
Thank you.
I think it was really fun having Tiburon, having a character that was not, he was very strong, but he wasn't like a straightforward like superhero in his own right. Like he was, he's a first mate, or kind of like, oh, I'll go along with you. And then you kind of found those moments like with the shark later, and just like having those cool moments like where he became greater was really fun to watch that too.
Yeah, I mean, Zach told me that I was the first mate, so I sort of, you can kind of go a couple directions with that, but I just went with like strong silent type, so like someone who's effective but generally doesn't need the spotlight, which seems like it would fit well with the first mate role. Fun Easter egg for anyone that doesn't speak Spanish and listens to this podcast: Tiburon means shark.
Yeah.
Sure do.
Nice.
I was going to say, I thought Tiburon was such a good foil for the party, where he would be like, what are you doing?
Yeah, it was a good voice of reason character.
We were all kind of used to the weirdness of our characters, and so we couldn't really see through the weirdness, and Tiburon was just this weirdness compass, or like no, that doesn't make
What's
any
that
sense.
smell, man?
Why would you let that happen? That's weird. So I thought that was kind of another great reason to have Tiburon in the party.
Yeah, the sea shanties and the peppermint sails and the riding the shark were all like benchmark Tiburon character development moments.
And every shock, what do you call that phrase? Like blistering barnacles by Davy Jones's beard. We need a supercut of all. Yeah, exactly.
So episode 4 was the rest of like raiding Drop-Off's hideout, seeing Bashir in there and gravely trying to pursue him.
So mad he got away.
For Bashir's stats, I basically just used Gravely's character sheet. So like he was basically a ranger that matched you. So kind of like trying to like, yeah, like he's running away from you. It's a ranger chasing a ranger. So guess what? This guy used Pass Without Trace. How do you feel about it? It's hard to follow.
Sucker.
So Gravely, and then we worked our way in. We opened the vault, played Dibs. You guys all remember Dibs? That was a fun moment.
Yes.
First session of like weird items. We introduced the trident, and
Maya still has a piano.
Oh yeah, we never really used the piano. We got to call back to that at some point. There's definitely some trailing items to use. After that, episode 5 was going back to the Bastion, all happy with your magic items and Merkins coming along with you, and then tragedy struck. Probably there's a lot to talk about in that episode.
Arrowed.
So yeah, early on, Maya got assassinated, which we don't have Jen here to talk about, but actually, like, your all perception, because like as we went through that episode and that like happening, my kind of notion of like, well, Drop-Off's an assassin and he intends to assassinate this person, and if you're a skilled assassin, you make sure it's going to happen. So he's a character who's very like, he's like a playable player, level 10 character that's very just geared towards everything that's useful to assassinate somebody he has built in. You know, she sort of like legitimately didn't have a chance because that was his goal, and then after that things just unfolded as they unfolded. I think that's a good thing to kind of open up of like, what were people's impressions of that and how it went and how it unfolded.
It was horrible to be like so powerless. Like I had nothing, like literally nothing at my disposal that could have helped. And so that was like a moment for Soot when like here he is again watching how the world is and how brutal it is. And so and he's powerless to help, like to make any changes to it. And you see how that impacted him directly after that.
Yeah,
when he all of a sudden this like slight, like he was starting to enjoy their company, and then all of a sudden this worldview that was beginning to like start to take shape was just absolutely shattered again, and he fell back into his old, you know, habits, back into the things that kept him alive.
Survival mode.
Yep.
So it was interesting. Like I had put a fair amount of thought into planning, not planning with Jen, but kind of preparing her for what was to come. Like I didn't tell her. I told her like, I'm expecting you to play Sarsa for a piece of this episode. So she had like Sarsa geared up and ready to go. She didn't know anything particular was going to happen to Maya, but I also made sure by the end of that session, actually in the middle of that session, before she was playing Sarsa, I think Jen was sitting through that battle, which went a lot longer than I thought it would because Soot tried to jump ship and a lot of things happened. So she was sitting there kind of not knowing what happened to Maya. But then in kind of the midpoint of that recording session, Jen and I actually recorded the piece that dropped later on of her waking up under the tree with the 6-foot squirrel. So like emotionally, Jen didn't go home feeling like, I don't know what happened to Maya. But in session, I gave everybody the option, like, okay, so we're going to record something now. If you want to be present, you can. Or if you don't want to know something your character doesn't know, you can leave. And everybody opted to leave, and we recorded that alone. And so all of the rest of you. So I put a lot of thought into like making sure Jen was going to be okay, not so much thought into making sure everybody else was okay. So impressions of that and kind of how that rolled out for all of you, I think is good to kind of check in on and discuss.
I mean, I think it's fun to have those moments where it's like, here's a secret, or here's something that, you know, might be revealed later. I think that's fun to use as a technique, especially when it's something that might be emotionally a bit of a payoff later on, for sure. Personally, I was very frustrated after that episode. In retrospect, I you know, it's interesting to listen to, but in the moment, I was very like, I didn't know how to feel. And I think I told you that, but and you were basically like, it's okay, like there's a plan involved, and just trust me. And I was like, all right.
I'll tell you, I wasn't here for the recording because I wasn't in that episode, and so I just got to experience that as a fan. I had no idea that's what was going to happen. Like I almost swerved off the road when I listened to that episode.
Like what?
I had the same experience. I didn't know what was going on. I just listened to it and was like, oh, here's the episode they recorded. I was like, oh, what? But Jen's not. Oh no! Should I call somebody? Oh my! You guys, but you know, oh my god, yeah.
Yes, exactly like that.
I definitely felt like I said, just powerless, like just absolutely powerless. And I think there were some things that like I just missed, like in the recording, like I missed the roles that Captain Drop-Off made. Like I just completely missed them. So it just sounded like you get hit by 2 arrows. Like it's like, huh? Wait, what? Oh, she's dead, and she fell overboard. Okay, like there was, and so I think I reacted like Chris was saying, like Soot reacted, and we saw how that went. You know, there's some of that like rebellion against the DM in that episode. But it was true to what Soot was feeling and kind of going through, and the shock of what had just occurred.
I remembering like how to play that. I consciously made the decision to like Weston was saying, like I don't remember a lot of roles. I consciously made the decision to have a lot happen behind the screen and really play that more the way your characters would experience. Like that notion of these bolts just came out of nowhere and then my friend was gone is really like how your players would feel. And I legitimately rolled everything, but he also really kind of like put the whole situation to his advantage in terms of like assassin abilities where you get automatic advantage if players are surprised and things like that. And the poison he was using, the serpent venom that we investigated later. So like I consciously kind of like kept a lot. I kind of played it as like a bolt hits her, another bolt hits her. It does this.
Yeah, you
much
are a
damage.
real good
She's
assassin.
dead.
Good job.
Yeah.
You killed really good.
Well, so the way that you all reacted to it emotionally was like miserable, but also kind of like I chose to kind of do that to you.
Gotcha.
That's what.
So
That's what. True
well done with
friends
your
do.
suffering.
And I think that's like I said, there's this element of us trusting each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like we're doing our best to give each other the benefit of a doubt. I wouldn't recommend a DM who's in a new party do that to their players, because it's just going to seem like, oh, you wanted to murder that player.
Yeah, because you have a real good idea of like a story point, and it's this is my second session. Okay, I'm done with this group. But again, yeah, like you said, we trusted Zach, and it was like there's a point to this, and it worked out.
It worked out great.
Was Maya always the target because she had the staff?
Yeah, so specifically Drop Off knew there's kind of like word out because of like Lady Aranye wanting that staff back and it being linked because of Maya's deal to like, I have this staff until I die. I think
Right.
Aranye couldn't, like, because of like rules of the Feywild, couldn't order her death or kill her, but kind of like word was out that like, hey, if this person died, I wouldn't be upset. And Drop Off, was going specifically for, I'm going to kill this person that has this staff because it's going to allow me to trade for this crown that's going to let me control the Leviathan, was Drop Off's plan.
And that's a really interesting thing that I don't think any of the characters really put together. Maybe XX in some way witnessed it, but the diadem came from Aranye that gave him all this power. And so that's interesting, like she's definitely a bigger player that we haven't. She's been there. We dealt with her in the first season, but it's like there's still more. I think that she's playing into the bigger game, whatever that means.
And so in terms of aftermath in that episode, like I think it was meant to like kind of cement like this is a bad person. Two big things happen in that episode: Soot's rebellion in response to that, and kind of like trying to grab Honeymist's amulet and jump overboard, but also Gravely's kind of resolve and kind of piecing the clues together of thinking, I think she's in the Feywild. Gravely piecing that together was very, I think, impactful to his ability to kind of like not be completely broken down in that period and kind of have hope. And provide a good teaser for the audience. I was a little bit like, oh man, he put that together. That's going to like break a reveal. But then in retrospect, listening to it, like, I think that's good. I think that's good for like the audience to also be like, oh yeah, maybe she is in the Feywild, and kind of like being with Gravely in that hope that like, maybe she's okay.
And the reason I didn't want to have like that. Well, I think I figured it out, but Gravely didn't. But I remember distinctly that moment in season 1 where Maya says, until I'm dead. And then, and then Aranya is like, okay. And Gravel's like, oh, wait a minute. Like he knew this was a mistake. and didn't forget that. And in the after the moment after her assassination, he's like, wait, in desperation of like, there's got to be some possibility she's alive, and and hope. And that was like this thin sliver of hope that, well, maybe she was taken instead of she died, or maybe she died and then was brought back because of that or something. So I think that's what justified that sort of realization.
Yeah, it totally did. That was a random thing that happened in season 1, partially because Jen was exhausted that night. She was like jet lagged.
So tired.
And we had this scene with her with Aranye, and she like legitimately like proposed that plan. And I, as Aranye, was like, yes, I will accept that. Good deal. And like it played big into season 3, just me thinking of like, that's got to have consequences in here. And here it was.
Don't make
this was
deals
the
with
consequence
the
to that action. So yeah, Weston, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about more Soot's attempted rebellion, imprisonment. Those are all scenes I were not anticipating in that episode. The imprisonment and kind of like negotiating, like, all right, we'll release him to you, Soot. We're not the kind of people that are just going to execute you. What did you guys think of all that playing out?
It was there was a couple things that led to Soot's rebellion, and it was obviously the death of Maya that kind of put him into that survival mode, and then him like imagining, or imagining the ship going down after seeing a hole in the hull of the ship, and in Soot's mind's eye, in my mind's eye, I saw the hole as a lot bigger.
So, yeah, that was interesting, because I was trying to explain like, oh, it's kind of small, it's it's manageable, you just have to figure out a way to deal with this. And your reaction was like, it's going down. But I think that was really appropriate for like how Soot would perceive it.
Yeah, because Soot hates water, right?
Soot hates water, and he just got something that would allow him to breathe underwater. So he's thinking, okay, the ship's going down. Drop-off is coming for us. We just stole a bunch of his stuff. I need to take everything I can and get out. And so he was just in panic mode. And I think that's something that doesn't happen in normal campaigns, because like lawful evil characters are tricky, are super, super tricky. But I knew you all could handle it. I knew that I trusted that you could handle that situation. So I went for it, and if Soot got away, I can only imagine like the toll that would have had on maybe Gravely and Captain Honeymist's relationship, or like you brought him aboard, here. Like I could see, kind of chessing it out, the consequences would be interesting. Regardless.
Well, I was really thinking in terms of like Honeymist's perspective of like, why would she not kill him right now?
Oh, yeah. Well,
why would they not be like, okay, like, this is not okay. This is not how a crew works. We're going to give you your wish and take the amulet back and give you your wish and throw you overboard. We're not going to mess with you on here.
Well, and I totally accepted that as the consequence for Soot's actions, because that's what Soot, that's the mindset Soot has. Take everything you can and run, or else somebody else is going to take it from you. So Soot was freaking out because he was sure he was going to die, and I'm really curious why he didn't. And that moment, the reason that he didn't die changed him, because he was already in this very vulnerable state. So I'm kind of curious what your mindset was. I know it was not an easy.
I mean, I was in that kind of like managing the DM moment of like, I don't want this character to just end here. And so like, I think throwing him in the brig, we'll deal with this later, was a good, like, both for Honeymist and me, like, let's figure this out moment. And then like Gravely went down and talked to him. And I think that kind of gave enough leverage to like, all right, like, I'm releasing him to you. I mean, there's a little bit of a leap there in this captain being willing to more invest in Gravely and Maya, as I think these are good people. And Tiburon's going to go along to kind of supervise, take him off my ship. But like, we're not the kind of people that execute folks, and I don't want him stuck in the brig. So I think that was a little bit of a leap for how I was kind of like perceiving Honey Mist in that moment. But I think it worked out, and I think it kind of like followed the logic. And I think like lock him up, we'll figure out this in a minute was a good like let's see if we can sort this out through some role play kind of thing.
I was really curious to see how Gravely would have turned out, having like lost his two like traveling companions that quickly in that quick succession.
Yeah.
So I really enjoy character death. I think it's something that is deepening to every story, to those who remain. And so as a player, I have to also be willing to know that is always a chance that I take, and a character that I love that does something stupid can be punished for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think those choices of Soot all throughout the season really had huge impacts. Starting with like, I'm gonna fight Drop Off back on the island, and me I hadn't like not fully statted Drop Off as a character, so I had to be like, oh, okay, he's got a big crossbow and he's got a sword, and like, let me put this together real quick.
Was Drop Off's plan to like capture Maya, or like what was, because I mean he was on the island, he saw all of us. Did he just not know about it yet? Like I'm really curious.
If you had chosen to go with Drop Off, he definitely would have like killed Maya and taken y'all prisoner, or killed y'all on board. I didn't think you would go that way, but like I think Honey Mist arriving at about the same time screwed up his plan. He was showing up to like, I've got a beat on these people. I'm trying to take out this one particular person in order to extract a favor for me. So he was heading in there and very, very frustrated that Honey Mist was right on his tail, and her presence there watching messed up his ability to act right then. But I think in the logic of Drop Off, like the notion of Honey Mist knowing about his hideout and going in for a raid, that was potentially, Drop Off maybe knew about that and was kind of like using it as bait to like set up this ambush to kill the person and get the crown, Tiara, bring up the Leviathan, summon the portal, assassinate the Waterlord, and take over the realm of Popolona. Anyway, yeah. Moving forward, so what is that? 5 or 6 was, I think that episode ended with Gravely saying, I think she might be in the Feywild.
No, that was the mid section.
Yeah.
Then,
before the like break.
Yeah, that was right before the break.
Okay. So then after that was Sarsa and Jarek arriving.
Sarsa and Jarek arrived, and then we went back into town to try to find a bag of holding, because for some reason that was the thing that we were like, well, all this terrible stuff happened. You said you knew about a bag of holding. sort of like a PTSD. Like, I just gotta hang on to this one thing.
Yeah, and I kind of like placed that, like, go back into the town and just hang out for a little bit was kind of an opportunity for let the characters. In my mind, the whole like thing that unrolled with like Soot and getting captured and all of that, and even a lot of what happened in fleeing from Drop Off's attack, was I wasn't really expecting it. So that all lasted longer than I was expecting it, and it was all great. So I was just definitely conceiving as like the opportunity to just go back to Giacca and decompress as both an opportunity for the characters and the players to just kind of like process wherever you needed to process. And that was also at that moment was like, let's see what happens if we bring some season 2 characters back into this. Let's see what happens if the DM brings a character that he was playing into this, and if we can sustain that. We're all kind of like experiments. I wanted to see how that went. And then we got back to Giacca, and Giacca Jeff came on back.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was fun. Well, real quick, I had one more thing to add about Soot's imprisonment, because I thought that was one of my favorite scenes with Gravely and Soot, because he had Gravely had punched Soot like after the wall was patched, or the hole was patched, out of frustration of just like, why didn't you help me? Like, why are you trying to jump ship like idiot? And then he came down to talk to you as like look, you're the only person I know. And I need your help, and I want to trust you, and like I'm going to give you a chance. And that was a really, for me at least, that was a really fun moment to play, because it was like, Gravely I've always played him as like a dependent person, and it switched him into this position of like, well, now I'm taking care of somebody, or I'm sort of responsible for somebody. And it's somebody that I don't really even necessarily like as a character, but he was doing the responsible thing. And I just liked that dynamic a lot.
Yeah, he was almost forced to like mature and take ownership of his own stuff in that moment.
Yeah.
Prior to that, he'd, like you said, he'd sort of latched onto Maya.
Yeah. Who got taken away. So it was an interesting dynamic and I think Soot or Gravely realized how powerful Soot can be. So he's like, I think you have the potential for doing the right thing. So I got to show you that, I trust you, and that will protect you, which like he saw Soot just being like, no, I'm just going to die. Like, I have to get out of here. And he's like, no, you're not going to die. Because I'm going to make sure that doesn't happen. Like, I've got your back. Or at least I'm going to try.
Huge.
Well, and I felt that like Gravely was coming from such a sincere place in all those things. Like you could see it in his backstory, like being pretty much like bullied and thrown around and underappreciated and all those things that he was. And in the first couple seasons, like he had Coach there as this like bowling ball, this force that, Gravely didn't have to really step up as the big brother, even though he still in his head was a voice of reason. With Coach there, he couldn't grow as much as he did once Coach left.
Yeah.
And that like, mother henness that he had for Maya, he then kind of attached to Soot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was fun.
Carlos, hold on. Carlos.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was only like was that your second episode with us?
That was the second session that I sat in on, and for a second, when Jeff rolled those numbers on Drop-Off's sniper arrow, I thought, "Oh no, this is a party wipe! Like he's just gonna murder all of us now because he got fed up with this." As it sort of went on, it continued to be terrifying, but I was sort of more assured of like, okay, he's not just gonna murder all of us. But Jen's probably dead, and I was like, "Oh man, what what happens now?" I just come in again. I was under the impression that I was only here for a couple of sessions, so to see him murder essentially a player that's been around since day one just struck me as sort of like, note to self: don't piss off Zach. But also, as Zach said, sort of what ended up playing out was really good from a storytelling perspective and really led to some good interactions and moments in a way that, again, even he didn't fully predict it was going to necessarily do. And that made for, it was probably one of my favorite sessions. I mean, also we were all still together and holding hands while hanging out in the same place. So that also holds some fond memories now, considering where we are in time. But it was I remember us taking the break because when Zach said like, hey, I'll sort of run a thing with Jen if anyone wants to stay, we all just sort of left, and it was just this general feeling of like, yeah, we're supposed to be unwinding, but it's more just like,
yeah,
how about that, huh?
How was that conversation in the other room?
I think there were some drums and we hit them. So let's talk about that shopping episode.
Oh my gosh, please talk about the shopping episode.
Mr. Jeff, back to Giacca.
I think we mentioned it at some point during the episode, but like Jeff had these cards for all of the items, and it was a stack of cards like 2 inches thick. Just okay. How about this? Like, Jeff, do you want to tell us how you came up with those, or what your
take to make that many? I mean, it just kept going. I was so impressed.
It's really funny.
I could have listened to that for like another 30 minutes. I was so on board.
And I think Jeff was ready to have you listen to it for another 30.
For those who haven't seen Jeff perform on stage, Jeff is all about the long con.
Oh, yeah.
And he will tell a story for a good 7 minutes before getting to a punchline, which may or may not work. The joke is about that it goes on for 7 minutes.
The notes that I got from Zach were, can you make some items that this guy has? And I took that to mean to make every item.
We had a session. I had a talk with Jeff where we like came up with this notion of this character had a bunch of random magic items. And some of them were mine. I threw him some of my ideas and he kind of generated some ideas. And in that discussion, I was not envisioning him like throwing them all out at once, at one time. Just boom, 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 boom.
I loved it.
But I loved how it played out. And this brings us to one of our listener comments. Listener on Twitter, Graphite Knight, I think his real name is Anthony. And Anthony's actually on a podcast of local San Diego people called The League of Ridiculous Conversation, LORC, available on Spotify. I listened to a little bit of it today. So his comment about his favorite moments in the podcast. Weirdly, one of my favorite moments was half of a shopping episode when the shopkeeper had the most inane and sometimes useless items. I laughed hard and then was inspired to make a list of my own for my players. Y'all inspired me. Thank you.
Nice.
So much, Anthony. And I actually responded to that. Thanks to Jeff Frank for the nearly endless list of useless magic items. And guess who's set to DM season 4?
Get ready, everybody. List after list after list.
I still think a really clever person could do some smart stuff with some of those things.
Yeah. Well, my kind of, I think my notion in like some not necessarily useless items, but just like weird, quirky items that would like not inherently like make your character essentially one level higher. Like you have a level 1 sword that just makes you stronger. And really all that does narratively is makes the DM have to throw stronger monsters at you and also give everybody else something stronger. Otherwise your character is overpowered compared to everybody else. So it's much more fun to just give people something that has one kind of quirky use you'll have to be creative about.
Yeah, some of those items were really useful. I thought I loved how Gravely, when he heard about the broom of untidying, was like, he's like, wait a minute, that can cover tracks really nice. I want that one. That one's great. It was very on
the notion of like there was the thing that unlocks something, but like you have to die.
I forgot about
that was a fun discussion that made you guys think like, ooh, wait a minute.
Oh yeah. Well, and I was like, hey, I make things die all the time. Like,
I'm cool with that.
Give it to my zombie and he'll die, I guess. and we'll get a free door opened up. I was all about that.
Didn't work like that. Not as directed.
Yeah. That was like I just sat back with that one and like waited for Jeff to like see what he wanted to do with that. Mm-hmm. If he gave it to you, like I would have let you have it. But Jeff was like, "Oh, I don't want to mess this up." So much fun in those episodes. Limoncello contest, the wedding that played out. That was probably, I think Giacca stretched into 2. So the wedding was probably in the second one, but that was the whole progression towards the wedding was great. We've talked about like the marketplace and Sindel figuring out Sindel and Gravely.
Oh God, entrepreneur Sindel was so
yes.
funny.
Oh
so
man,
great
and
so fun.
And the
omens,
the forcing of Gravely to go on this wedding date, and like he didn't want to do it, but everyone else was like, "Yeah, do it." And he was just like, I feel so awkward and I don't know how to be on a date. And
yeah, playing that out was so fun. when Farrah was introduced, like Jeff's concept of like, I'm going to introduce a lot of pairs of characters so you can play one and I can play one. So he introduced Farrah and I was like, oh, I'll be Farrah because he's Phil. And Jeff was like, no, I have a plan for this. Like in that moment, Farrah could have been me, but like Jeff was like, no. And like that had huge consequences and was so wonderful for the epic romance between.
Oh, I do
Farrah.
think that we should at some point have a Soot Goes to School episode.
Yeah,
God.
that was a great moment too. Soot just bouncing around in shady ways in that episode was awesome.
Oh man!
See, on the boat, like, we almost lost Soot, but it wasn't until we got to that school that I thought, oh no, we're really gonna lose him now. This is when he goes away.
Do we need to go in there? What? We'll just wait outside this school? That doesn't seem good if we just like wait outside school.
He really shouldn't be in there.
It's a school library, so what are they gonna have?
They had enough.
The wedding moment, the wedding under the tree was nice, like kind of like culture of Giaco, where they kind of like worship this great tree, was nice kind of like nuance. And the charisma roles were a great moment of like Gravely, this ritual of like we all talk up the bride and groom, and Gravely rolled terribly, and Sindel got to like rescue him was a very fun moment.
It was really fun.
Thanks for that.
Everyone loves a wedding.
Oh, what about Captain Drop-Off trying to convince Soot
Mm-hmm.
to come work for him?
Yeah.
Like immediately after he like murdered his friend. I like. Did you think that Soot was going to agree to that? Like or was it
potentially? I didn't really know because like the like notion of. I feel like the only way Soot wouldn't agree to that was because of him not being killed by like Gravely and Honey Mist, which was his kind of like
his awakening, yeah.
His awakening to like maybe there's good in the world, because
exactly.
I think Drop-Off's perspective was I just demonstrated that I am the top dog here. I'm powerful. And so like this like creature that has some magical powers that I could use is going to want to come with me because he wants to survive. And so like I feel like Gravely or Soot in another moment would definitely be like, oh yeah,
and
I'm gonna be with this guy. But like, you know, that was kind of his shot. I legitimately didn't know necessarily what Soot would do in that moment, and I think it played out nicely.
And that's a good point. Without that like imprisonment, like mercy, you're right. He very well might have gone with Captain Drop-Off. Like in the moment, I wasn't playing any what ifs. I was playing Soot, you know, as he was and in the relationships that he had. So like if that didn't happen, he very well could have moved off with Drop-Off. That's a good point.
And I had kind of like a notion of like I felt like definitely based on like how you had played things that it would really depend on how that moment role played out of what your decision about what Soot would do would go and kind of what was going in that moment. And I definitely had a plan for if Soot chose to go with them, him becoming kind of a point of view character for the Trident and kind of like doing some scenes of him meeting the folks on the Trident and getting, you know, Drop-Off a little better, which also takes me back to like the moment of for Tiburon, the moment of turning point that Carlos, you didn't really know was Tiburon deciding to like tag along and go along to Giaca, which was like legitimately just out there. Like some people are going to go in Giaca. The crew of the ship is going to stay and do repairs. It was legitimately out there for Tiburon to be like, yeah, I'll tag along with you guys. And that would have been the point. That would have been the exit point as originally conceived for Tiburon to kind of be the point of view character for the Bastion. But Carlos followed along with like, yeah, I'll go with you. And I didn't say anything else because I was like, yeah, I want Carlos to stick around with us. And that was the rest of the season for you.
I had no idea you entrapped me, Zach. Oh my God. It just seemed like, all right, well, everyone's going to town. I don't want to be here alone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I might as well go with them. And then once Jeff started GMing and naming all these items, I'm like, this was a great choice. I love it here.
It absolutely was. Well, anyway, surging forward, lots of cool stuff happens in introducing the goblins was the last little like piece of frosting on the cake. We had one of my like options for how you would get to the island was another thing that was like I didn't really know. I figured you'd find a way because Soot was motivated to go there. You'd figure it out. One of my options was I described in the who was in the
Salty Seagull.
the Salty Seagull. Yeah, there's a mention there that there's some goblins at a table messing with some stuff. And those were the goblins that were building the semi-submersible. So one of my options for how you would get to the island was meeting these goblins who had this plan to like kind of scavenge stuff, which I had kind of like set aside, didn't think was going to come back. And then it was like the last little bit that Jeff dropped into Giacca before chaos happened. That was fun to play as Jarek. And then, you know, they became important characters later on. And then drop-off arrived, chaos happened, floods happened, and that was a whole new episode. Skills challenge, Giacca's being flooded. What were kind of like your perceptions of that episode? That was definitely another episode where like I didn't know how it was going to go. I was just going to like put my faith in all of you finding interesting things to happen, and like you definitely did. So talk a little bit about that.
I got really excited for about 10 seconds when I remembered, wait, I have this trident.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, he's riding some sort of giant beast.
It's
and I
mine.
thought for a second I'd be like, He-Man, I have the power, and I take over the giant monster that was about to come kill us all, and then it was pointed out that it was an elemental, so I had to come up with something else.
Womp, womp, womp.
Womp womp.
But that's still, you wrapped it around to that. We made awesome stuff happen with the trident.
Yeah, that shark moment was great. Tiburon on the shark,
Oh,
rescuing
yeah.
people on a shark in the water.
Most
was
certainly.
so cool. And having Soot and Sindel sort of dual, or Sarsa, I guess there were so many characters, like a bunch of magic casters, you know, fighting the water and, you know, pushing back the water, and then like, you know, people bringing back, you know, rescuing people out of the city and everything. It was one of those, like, the party was split. Like, we were definitely all over the place, and that was you could definitely feel the chaos in the situation, but I think it captured it really well. Like, if all of us were together, I don't think it would have been as climactic as it was. So that was fun to play out.
As I conceived of that in my mind, it would be like everybody kind of goes their own direction. They fan out to try to save the town, and everybody does their own thing. And then we kind of like judge how each effort went, and we add that up. And like, as some of you overlapped, as like Sarsa went for the Crescent Squall, but Tiburon went with her, and Soot was down there interacting with the same sort of stuff. I was like, well, of course they wouldn't all go separate. In my DM brain, I'm like, how do I like reconcile these? How do I like combine these? But like, yeah, of course they wouldn't just like be separate, and just kind of tried to roll with the punches and figure out sort of how that would go together. They went together great, I think.
Just so you guys know, slightly off topic, but my daughter, as you guys know, is listening to season 3 right now. She just texted me from her bed saying, Maya just died.
Oh no.
Oh, so sad.
Oh, we've traumatized
Good night,
the child.
sweetie. Nothing is permanent in life.
Gosh.
Mwah.
She gets better.
Text her back. Yeah, we're recording the wrap up episode, and Jen's not there. It's really sad for us.
Oh, and she knows that
Well-
part too, because I did mention that Jen wasn't going to be.
Oh no. Fast forward.
Life is futile. Everything dies. Good night.
The Soot moment in there, that was a roll like Soot trying to like rescue Sindel in there and like get the bubble on her head was a really moment where like I was rooting for the dice to go a different way, and I was just trying to make the calls of like, is this successful, is that successful, let's roll and find out, and for them both to be kind of like washed away. It was very like an attempt at a heroic moment for Soot, and a redemption moment that like didn't quite play out
It
as
didn't
much
quite
as he
work, yeah.
planned. Yeah, and I was like, oh no, like maybe I should lie about this 11 or what it was, but like,
No,
just went
absolutely
with
not.
it.
Yeah. Well, it's like Sindel is such a like proud, strong character that
Yeah.
Soot was just seeing like his like he was kind of having some like self-reflection, and he just denied an opportunity that he would have in the past absolutely taken up on. So he's kind of like experimenting, like, okay, I'm going to put myself to the wind, and so far it's worked out. You know, like for him, you know,
Mhm.
he's kind of testing the world now, and that was his test. And then it was just like shoved back in his face, because I mean Sindel's a very proud, very strong character. Like, she can take care of herself.
Mhm.
But he was just trying to do something, just trying to do something nice, and then they both just got wrecked.
Well, and I think she in that moment was expecting to be wrecked. She was in the mindset of like, I'm gonna hold this back as far as I can, and I don't know what's gonna happen after that, but probably I'll drown. And so
Soot
like
was
him
mirroring
jumping
that.
out and trying to rescue her was like absolutely wonderful, and absolutely something Soot from a day previous would never have done. It was a really beautiful moment, but it didn't quite work out for him, which was like, in that moment I still wanted it to be more of a triumph, but also the fact that it wasn't fully like set him up really
Right.
nicely for like the course of the season, having a lot more growth. So that worked out well.
Yeah, I think it did too. And I mean, we all have those moments in life where like we we try and do the right thing, and then it just doesn't. Like,
Yeah.
it just doesn't work. Like, you try and like be the bigger person, or you try and help the person in need, and it just doesn't work. And so I think it's a very relatable moment as well.
Yeah. So let's see what happened after that. We recorded that. I think that was a Zencaster episode. The tail end of that episode was it's midway in that episode, like the limoncello drunken. In the middle of that episode was the last thing we recorded in person, and then the rest of that episode we recorded a couple months later after the pandemic. We were scheduled to record like the Thursday before the world fell apart.
Yeah.
And like at the beginning of that week, we were like, can we record on Thursday? We're not sure. It'll probably be a lot clearer by Thursday whether it's okay for like humans to be in person. And that week was like Monday, nobody was sure. Wednesday, like the NBA was canceled. Thursday, Disneyland shut down. And then Friday, the world ended.
Yep.
So we did not record. That would have been a very nice stopping point to stop for any amount of time, because it would have been kind of what I had conceived as like the halfway kind of like season semi-finale of Giacca is destroyed, but then we hear Maya is okay, and that's kind of like the cliffhanger, but we did not quite get that done. That's where we paused. We had the very wonderful Dude, Where's My Sword? Which we had actually already recorded in person. We stopped because Weston was having a baby. He wasn't able to record, so that delayed us a little bit. So that's where we did Dude, Where's My Sword, which was awesome. Yeah, and we were supposed to come together to just get that last piece that we didn't do. Anyway, we eventually got to the kind of like season finale. Not season finale, but like midpoint, break point. The reveal of Maya being off somewhere with a giant squirrel. And then I think was the next episode's the Return of the XX gang. Yeah.
That episode was fantastic.
Very fun. Always great to get the gang back together.
Oh yeah.
Cause trouble.
Yeah. Fun to revisit them. Fun to bring in Alex as Carol, the portal hopping.
Love that.
That was
It
a
was
lot of
so
fun.
great. It was like
Portal
some
hopping
weird
monkey.
Doctor Who episode. It was wonderful.
She did just a great job of being this kind of like going with the flow. I've been being sucked through these portals for a while, and I just try to roll with it and be friendly if I can. And a lot of fun inviting her in. That's probably a good point to have another listener question. So Celine, who's on our Discord server, Chris, tell us how people can join our Discord server.
If you go to our Twitter at Roll Table, there is a Linktree link, which is the only link that's on our profile. And that has a link to all of the things you can go to: our website, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and there will also be a link for our Discord. And you can join from there. There's a kind of an open link, and you can go on. And once you join the Discord, you can see a lot of different channels, and it'll be fun to have you there. And you can see official artwork from all the seasons. You can see discussions for all three and the ongoing seasons there, as well as ask questions about DMing and about rolling characters, and we can help you roll a character.
And Jeff has a whole thread on how to make pizza. So Celine on our Discord asked a question. How do you make the changes in cast so smoothly written and coordinate that kind of thing logistically? Which is a good question. And some of us started to chime in on Discord, and I was like, shut up. We're going to talk on the wrap-up episode.
Yeah, seriously, who would do that?
Need commentary on that.
Gross.
I can kind of share a little bit about how we manage stuff.
Well, I think initially when we had the conversation about how the whole thing would go, and just to mention this briefly, we all kind of liked the idea of being able to play different characters and rotating who would DM between seasons. And we didn't know if it would work, and we're still kind of figuring some things out. But we, kind of put in a bid for like, oh, I have an idea for this upcoming season, or I think I want to do this, or I want to play a different character. And we just kind of sort it out, and whoever is going to DM takes the reins, and everybody else kind of figures out, am I going to continue with this one character, or am I going to play a new character, and what would make sense from a narrative standpoint? Like, who is going to be the thread, or is there going to be a character that kind of keeps going? Like season 2, which I DM'd, had 2 characters that started in season 1, and then 2 new characters that were brand new. And so it kind of, was that experiment of, can we keep things going, but have the feeling of something new and almost standalone, but then also tie it together to make it this overall, greater narrative, which I think it's been pretty fun to see how that's come together and how it's continuing to evolve.
Yeah. I mean, so you mentioned like, well, we don't really write anything because it's improv. The thing that is probably most planned is what characters are going to be in a given episode, because like largely just because logistically we need to know like who we need to schedule with, who needs to be in the room for this recording session. And so we know that much more than exactly how that character is going to enter and how things are going to play out. And a lot of times, at least from my planning, those are kind of the most significant sort of turning points of like, okay, in this episode, Carlos's new character is going to show up. And in this episode, Jen's character is going to leave, but then she's going to come back as another character. And in this episode, we're going to go back to the XX gang. And so these people will be playing these characters. So a lot structured around that. And I think in terms of like the most interesting entrances and exits in the story, it's a lot of like, oh yeah, those like it for these episodes we just like are talking about right now. The XX gang, which was just like a random experiment in season 1, was so successful and so fun that when I was planning season 3, I was like, we gotta get that team back and see kind of like how they're doing and have fun like that again. So I think those have been sort of like the most characters interesting entrances and exits have been kind of the most fun, inspiring pieces of where things go.
This season has been, I think, the most fluid in terms of like we had Branch come in season or episode 2, 3, and Carlos's character Tiburon came in like episode 3 or 4 or something, and then Sindel came in, Jarek and Sarsa came in, Maya left, Soot came back. I mean, there was a lot of back and forth, and it was really, it was a very fluid, and I was worried it was going to be like, oh man, is this going to be too confusing? But it kind of just kept flowing. And it was interesting to see. It was almost like a Tarantino narrative, where you kind of followed all these little chapters, but they all kind of came together, which it ended up working, I think.
Yeah, it's hard for us to know within the podcast of like, is the casual listener following all of this? But I think all of you do such good character work with each character that I think I imagine people have nobody's going to confuse, Matt doing Branch with Carlos doing Tiburon, because they're very distinct characters. It's not like those two guys kind of sound the same and I don't know what's going on. You all do such just like brilliant direct character work, both in like voice work and who your character is, that like I feel like certainly like early on when we're introducing characters, I try to be very conscious of like I don't want too many people in this episode so a listener can kind of get to know each character. But towards the end of a season, bringing everybody together, I think, is almost like necessary. We want to see the whole team together doing the thing.
And I think one of the other aspects that leads into the how do we do the changing cast is, I mean, we all know we're going to play at some point. We're all willing to sit out for times.
Yeah, that's huge too. People being okay with not being in an episode, which like Matt, you're a good person to speak to this because you kind of got abandoned for not only a few episodes, but also it turned out to be a couple of extra months because of the pandemic. So please continue.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, so there's that aspect of it, but there's also, we have tons of friends that we want to bring in onto the show.
Yeah.
We had Alex, we got a couple people we brought on several people we brought on for the one shot, and being willing to step aside to make room for them and for everybody. I mean, when we started this whole thing, it was basically this group minus Carlos plus Jen, but we're like, it's too many people for every episode. So we kind of pared it down a little bit. And I think, being willing to make those changes is, if someone else is trying to do this, that's how you do it.
Huge. People willing to be like, yeah, I don't need to be in this one is like very much appreciated. I think I'm the only one who's been in literally every episode so far. So if y'all need me to take a break, I'm probably up.
Yeah, I think Jen was on track for being in every episode, and then she missed like the one shot last year, and then
the holiday one shot because she was sick. Anyway, the XX portal jumping things. Any sort of commentary about those episodes?
Oh, can we just please talk about the immovable rod? Can we please just talk about the immovable rod?
Another epic moment. I didn't even know that was a possible thing to move an immovable rod. We recorded forward. Weston, you should give the retelling of the immovable rod.
So like XX Minotaur's like whole thing is that he's a big burly like dangerous minotaur, right? Like he's a big dude, strong, and so to kind of prove, I don't know, he was broing out with the demon and decided like, oh, I'm gonna move that blasted thing. Runs at it, and then Zach told me to roll a strength check, so I did, and I rolled a natural 20. And Zach turns to me and says, "It doesn't move."
It's immovable.
And then I'm like, no, that cannot be the case. And I like pulled out my like rules
not just
lawyering.
a natural 20. Like, what was that roll? Like the natural 20 didn't do it. It was because like the actual roll was like 36 or something.
No. In the rules for the immovable rod, it says that you have to make a strength check to move it, and the only way to move it is to roll a natural 20 on that strength check.
I don't think so. I think it says it's a DC 30 roll.
Is it DC 30?
That's what I remember as well.
And I had to like pull out and kind of like skim the text, and I kind of missed that part, and that's what you read.
I was like, wait a minute. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Anyway,
then you kind of like whispered to Chris and like, oh, it would have worked. And we had to like kind of like stop and be like, okay, we got to do that because like,
yeah, DC 30. Yeah, you're right.
It's got to work. And DC 30, like in terms of like what that means is, if that's like categorized as like, it's a DC doing something that's impossible is a DC 30. It's not just rolling well. It's also being really, really good at that thing. And that's what it was. So it moved.
Yeah. He has like a plus 12 to his strength or something. So,
and you had done something extra, or you had taken, because you had taken some rogue abilities, you had taken expertise in athletics. That's what put you over the top.
Yeah. Anyway, it was a really fun moment, and it was like the most rules lawyer I have been in the campaign, where, where I was like, no, I gotta look this up. This can't be right.
And great. Like I cut
was
I
great.
cut like the first piece, but we kind of like started recording forward with me
Right.
saying like, oh, he does like everything perfect and he feels so good about this. And he just like charges and it's exactly what he wanted to do. And he just gets like clotheslined by this thing because it doesn't move because it's immovable. And then we went on for like a couple of minutes and that's when you like looked up and I kind of like heard the whispering of like, oh, it would have worked. Oh yeah, it would have worked. And we like stopped and went like, okay, no, it's got to work then. Let's go back.
You need to give me this.
Yeah.
He could do one thing good.
Which was way better.
Anyway, it was
And
fun.
so great. Like I think we mentioned
But
already.
like all this stuff behind the scenes to happen for like in the story being like, oh, this is an immovable rod. Oh, I moved it a little bit. Oh, okay. Well, let's keep
Must
going
be
and
effective.
continue. And nobody ever saw it or heard from it again.
XX Bloody Heart has it, right?
No, XX Minotaur has it.
Does he?
Yeah.
XX Bloody Heart has the
rock
token, which is what I thought, which I was very prepared for you to use a rock token in the final fight, which you totally didn't.
No, I decided to summon Nefeshni.
It's such a Jeff thing to have that too, you know? Like, you know he's going to pull that out and just abuse it somehow. I mean that in the best possible way.
Mhm.
No, for sure. I am intentionally going to pick the stupidest time to bring that back up. I have it written on a Post-it note by my bedside table so
Don't
that I can
forget.
think about it every day
Don't forget
to
the
keep
feather.
it in my brain. Don't forget, XX has a rock token.
See, you made a mistake summoning the fashion. You should have just summoned XX Minotaur. That's what should have happened.
There
You know,
go.
honestly.
That
'Cause
would have
he's
been
dependable.
amazing.
He's dependable.
Well, anyway, so those episodes were a lot of fun. We went back. We saw the summoning of the reveal. Well, the ring of the portal had been revealed. That was kind of like end of the cliffhanger, but we saw the summoning of the Leviathan and the opening of the portal and the water troops coming out. And it kind of seems like it's happening again to those two characters that had been back in respite. And then Drop Off just straight up assassinates this dude again. Little fight. I was not expecting that episode to have a fight with Bashir, but when Chris said like Gravely's looking for Bashir, I was like, yeah, Bashir's probably there. And like that, we kind of like generated that whole fight. The rest of the season is kind of like the one long plan to like they plan their assault and they hike over to the Bastion and they do this underwater plan, which was very fun. That was another moment where like I didn't know how you guys were going to approach, and that plan was pretty awesome and fun to play out the murky underwater trek up onto the Trident, meeting Branch, who's an octopus,
Oh, that was fun.
sabotaging the cannon, meeting Bashir, the snakes, the Soot rejoining the situation.
Drunk Bashir was very interesting, or like
Yeah.
medicated,
Pain
heavily
medication
medicated.
Bashir. That was fun to play. Yeah, so like any kind of final thoughts or observations about that whole final push?
I would say when we were in camp and before sort of anything was happening, Dropov had murdered Maya, and
Mhm.
then he murdered something else and named himself like Lord of the Sea, and had all these elementals at his beck and call. It was just literally terrifying. Of like, okay, this is like a Dark Souls video game. Like, how the heck are we gonna beat this enormous, super powerful bad guy? And the fact that you kind of like left it so open-ended was in some ways like a little distressing, because it was taking us a while to sort of like spin up the wheels as to like, okay, what is the plan? What parts are part of the plan and what parts are not part of the plan? We know we got to go to that ship. We know we got to try and get the drop on him, but how is that going to happen? How are we going to do it? And it's interesting to hear you saying that you actually didn't know how we were supposed to approach it either, which
Mhm.
means there was no correct answer. We literally just arrived at the best plan that we could arrive at as a group of people.
Mhm.
And it ended up working out pretty spectacularly well for us, considering. But I found that very interesting. It felt like a long episode of a lot of discussions, but once we started rolling with it, and the fact that we arrived at it in such an open-ended way was fairly exciting.
I liked the good cop, bad cop episode of Merkins being ripped up.
That was a fun gimmick. That was very fun.
that was nicely.
Just
done
gonna
by
make
you.
some stew for the kids, and
Tell me about the Captain Merkins.
yeah, that like planning aspect, we did that kind of, accidentally a little bit in season 1 of a similar like big discussion of how are we going to do this. I don't remember exactly what I had conceived at that point, but a little bit like I'm listening for like, how do you want to do this? And so what's going to happen when they try this? And in both those episodes, that like planning around the table in the cottage in season 1 and the how are we gonna get on the trident and get this crown here was like, yeah, like you all just talk, figure out what you want to do, and like both of those episodes are just really heavily edited in that like all the kind of like chat and legitimate discussion and kind of like throwing out some ideas that you end up abandoning. A lot of that I just cut out. And so I kept the relevant stuff. And so it really is a legitimate, like, let's figure out a plan, which I think was another way to kind of like embrace the improv and embrace the like giving the players a lot of agency. There was not a clear route.
It felt a little bit like a Bowling in the Dark, where we sort of had to trust that you had the gutter guards up, or that we just weren't going to go end up in the gutter, because otherwise we just wasted like an hour or two of our time ending up at the most terrible plan possible, and you just kind of let us fall into it, which would have been funny and fun in a completely different way.
Yeah. So our actual recording session was, I think, the whole fight with Bashir, the rings moment, XX Bloody Heart with the rings and punching Bashir was another epic, wonderful moment. We recorded that and then the planning session, and then we like ended at the end of the planning session, I think, walking over to the Bastion. So I was able to plan out like, okay, they're going to try this plan, and so let me kind of flesh out the details of what they're going to encounter along that way. And so
I'd like to nominate the rings for MVP.
Yes.
MVP of the series so far.
Over and over. The rings got it done thanks to Jerry the Boggle.
Jerry!
No joke.
So, I mean, that brings us to the finale, and we talked a lot about, a lot last time about how that turned out. Epic ending. So, kind of like last thoughts about season 3, and then we can do a kind of like quick teaser of season 4.
It wasn't until retrospect that I realized how many animals were involved in our climax, from a phoenix to a giant turtle to an octopus to snakes.
And so many frogs.
And so many frogs. God,
Oh,
the frogs
the
were so
frogs.
great.
Massive amount of amphibious
I love druids. They're so fun. So fun to play.
conjuration needs to go away.
Nope.
Conjuration needs to just explode and leave forever.
I always want to play like a conjuration wizard, but they're just not as much fun when it comes to their conjurations. And then I'm like, oh wait, druids do all the things that I like.
I conjure 16 weasels. Great.
It's a lot of extra
Great.
business.
Let me just get all those minis out. This is going to extend combat by about 40 minutes.
Yeah.
My whiteboard was just filled with numbers as we were doing that. I was like, all right, this person's hurt and this one's not. Okay.
Well, Zach, I got a question from a DM perspective. Is this season it seemed like you improv'd a little bit more than planned stuff? Kind of went with it, and I know that you had mentioned I'm just going to try to not plan anything, like at certain points. And how do you think in retrospect that went, or do you think do you like the more loosey-goosey kind of style, or do you like having a little bit more of a game plan? Not like saying like this is exactly what's going to happen, but like where do you think the balance is there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a constant challenge. It's a scary thing. Like, that especially with a bunch of just like brilliant performers and improvisers, that like I'm doing a big disservice if I like map out a thing that's going to happen regardless of who's playing and what they do. So I don't want to do that. But also, like, I want every episode to matter, to feel compelling, and not have episodes that were just like, yeah, nothing really happened. Like, we goofed around a little bit, but nothing was big. So finding that balance, I think, is critical and difficult. But for the most part, the places where I really like had moments of like, I'm just going to let them go and see what happens, were some of the best moments in my mind, and true of season 1 too. And I tried to do more of that here. I think like having a structure of like, you know, having some like check-in points where like more or less, I know we're going to start here. Obviously, I know that this and this are going to happen, and I think we're going to end here, is about as much structure as I think is good. And largely those should be things that are like, this is inevitable because I know the bad guy is up to this right now and is going to do this. So that's coming. What the players do with it, I don't know, but like that's coming and it's going to happen. I think is a good way to plan it. I've mentioned before that I kind of try to go with a very loose plan for the big picture, and the closer you get in the timeline, a more firm plan. So I know a lot of what's going to happen the night that we sit down to record, but I don't necessarily know that much of what's going to happen next time. And even if that night that we record goes about the way I expected, it's really not like solidified in my mind till it happens. So often it's not until we actually like play it out and it happens that I have enough clarity to really plan more of what's going to happen the next time. So bits and pieces, the big dramatic moments are kind of like what I had planned out, but all the nuances and great stuff that happened, I didn't. And I tried to really like, when something really interesting happened, find ways to like make that important, make that come back, make it matter.
Nice.
I mentioned earlier that I put a lot of planning into like, how is Jeff going to use this stupid feather that summons a giant bird? I forgot some of the other magic items you had, and when I remembered one of the other specific magic items, that triggered a whole like, oh my gosh, this could have happened. I should have set it up this way. That is like clawing at my soul, which I'm not sharing because like maybe I'll find a way somewhere in the future to kind of create similar circumstances. But you know, that's part of leaving it up to improv, that sometimes you miss those moments. But man, there's so much I'm proud of. There's so much I'm proud of, largely from my role of like setting it up and then backing off and letting awesome people do awesome things. One of which is just like, Jeff, you're Giacca, go. Giacca really was completely Jeff's creation. The notion of it being kind of like Italian inspired, he said, yeah, this is going to be based on the Italian city of Genoa. That was completely him, as not at all in my mind originally. And so that whole flavor, the opera, really everything about Giacca was very much like Jeff's concept, and really added a lot of awesomeness. And
Giacca means jacket in Italian.
Yes, and Zach liked it so much he destroyed it.
Mm-hmm. I did. Giving Jeff this town, I absolutely knew from the beginning when I was saying, Jeff, you're going to be this town, that I am eventually going to destroy it.
Do we ever not destroy towns?
The more heart and reality and like making it like real and putting like real souls in this town, like that's better, because it's going to make when I come along and destroy it all the more heart-wrenching.
We're kind of the worst when it comes to that. Like the towns are just destroyed.
That's what bad guys do.
Well, sometimes the good guys do it while trying to defeat the bad guys too.
Good point.
Alrighty, well, let's last thing to check in on is
I am very disappointed that we didn't get any follow-up with Gravely and Farah at the end. I thought for sure impromptu wedding or big celebration. I feel like we missed an opportunity there. And I want to blame myself mostly for that.
I blame you.
I wanted that. I don't know if it's bonus content. I don't know if people want to draw.
Jeff,
I don't know if people want to draw pictures of that wedding and send it into our Discord. I don't know if we want to like.
Gravely is not going to get married anytime soon.
Whoa. Okay.
Oh.
Wow. I think
confirmed.
I think Farah might have some things to say about that. And the kids.
The kids in the bushes. Yay!
I feel a little crowded. I don't know if I like all these kids around me all the time. Maybe we have a little privacy sometimes.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing to like build off of, though. What are some other kind of like threads that are out there that we might revisit in the future, or things that anybody wants to see happen in the future? Is a good way to maybe wrap up.
I want to see what happens with Soot and Honey Mist and their
Yes.
fleet.
Yeah.
Coming back with like this fleet of ships, and like Soot's a sea captain with a crew of dead.
Oh,
like,
dude.
I mean,
yes.
I'm just looking forward to inevitably whenever that happens.
He just becomes Davy Jones.
Pretty much.
I mean, it's gonna be interesting. I think it'll be fun if we ever see the XX gang come back, or in some respect.
That was such a great sign off of the XX gang, of like the choice of like, okay, there's this portal open. There's basically two places to go. You could go back to Giacca, or you could go back to the Feywild. And like legitimately, for some people, there was more of a choice than others, but legitimately, like, you know, it was up to people where you go. And very much like Alex very much could have like decided to be to step in and join things, but she opted to kind of stick with the gang. And that was just such a beautiful moment of like, yeah, I like know these guys and I kind of trust them, and I'm going to go hang out with them. And this Aranye person seems pretty cool. And the last sign off line of like, did we mention she's a giant spider? What?
Wait, what?
And that was the last we heard of Carol. Definitely want to follow up on that.
Oh,
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'd love to see. I know we kind of closed the portal hopping as part of that, but there's no reason it couldn't come back. I would love more adventures there.
Mm-hmm.
That was my favorite part of the season as a listener was that whole episode.
We have already recorded the one shot following Jarek and Sarsa to rescue Jarek's dad, which was a lot of fun. That will air next on the stream. Jarek's dad, played by my dad, Tad Stones, which was a lot of fun for me and a lot of fun to bring him into this and make a character.
He was great. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And we had 2 other guest stars that day as well, so lots more people to listen to. A lot of fun.
Yeah, and everybody did really great. There's lots in that episode to potentially revisit and incorporate into the future for sure. Sindle's a Phoenix out there somewhere. She might crop up.
I don't think we're giving away hints about season 4 because it's going to be very interesting and new, and a lot of us are playing new characters, I think. So we're going to keep that under wraps.
Yep.
Right, Jeff?
Yes, indeed.
So, Jeff, any final notes about season 4?
Season 4 will be our secretest season yet.
Can you confirm or deny that we're going to see new locations?
I can confirm that we will see all new realms, all new locales, but maybe some familiar faces.
I have one more little thing to add is just the addition of Weston's music in the background of all the fights and everything was really fun. And this was the first season we really fully started to use all that. So just thanks to Weston and for letting us use the Arcane Anthems library of music, and definitely check that out.
Yeah, and our process has been like we record and then I would edit it down and then send it off to Chris, and Chris is the one actually like cutting in all the music and sound effects and adding like all sorts of stuff that like I would always be surprised from. And like whenever I'd listen to the final episode, there was always extra moments where I would get chills or like have a laugh that he incorporated with some sound effects. So Chris did a ton of work. Thank you for that. Chris did a ton of work grabbing Weston stuff and incorporating it and amping up every episode. So I'm sure you can, those of you who are listening, comparing season 3 to season 1 and all the extra stuff we've added, that's mostly Chris. So thank you for all that work.
My pleasure.
I have a bit of, I don't know if this is how much we want to include, but I have a bit of copy that I've written that kind of sets up from what Zach wrote, kind of my prologue that I'll start the season with. I don't know if you want me to read off that part.
Yeah, if you want to, that'd be perfect. That'd be a perfect way to sign off.
It has been 10 months since the death of Miriam Hearthspear, the first knight of the Knights of the Realms. The world has slipped further into chaos, into what is being called the Great Turmoil. Armies march in all corners of the world, both beastly and human. The realm of United Kings, historically stable and stalwart, was shattered and splintered as the 40 monarchs were succumbed to assassination, overthrow, and displacement. Their lack of leadership has all but dissolved the efficacy of the United Federation of Realms, leaving each realm to fend for itself. Refugees flood from realms lost to those defending their borders, creating more and more desperate situations. In other realms, resistance has worked. The realms of Oakheart, Marcatia, and Poplona have successfully thwarted hostile takeover, and smaller realms like Denbury and Hortonshire were able to defend off attacking hordes. In all the realms, the de facto defensive force has been the Knights of the Realms. With the need so great, open recruitment and enlistment has led many to claim the name Knight of the Realm. Many more lose the title upon falling in battle. The number of knights climbs every day as the world becomes more fraught, and the armies of good mount their best resistance. With the sudden explosion in members, new problems have surfaced, and those with the bond of knighthood might not be all that they seem.
Ooh.
Done.
Nice.
Bring 2 pairs of underwear.